The rumors have turned into a full-blown beef, and Luka Doncic dropped a bombshell nobody saw.
I can't stay silent anymore. For me, the GOAT conversation ended when I saw what type of person he is.
And you may think it's just another greatest of all-time conversation, but once you hear the full statement he made, you realize this is deeper and way more personal than that. Okay, so before we even get into the stats and the rings and all that, I need you to understand something about Luka Doncic that most people are completely sleeping on right now. This man grew up with a poster of LeBron James on his wall, not Jordan or Kobe. He said it himself in multiple interviews going back to his EuroLeague days, that LeBron was the player he looked up to the most as a kid. So when Luka finally landed in LA and got to share a locker room with his childhood idol, you would think that would be the beginning of something beautiful. And honestly, for about 5 minutes, it looked like it might be. But what actually happened behind those closed doors is the reason Luka Doncic can now look a reporter dead in the eye and say Michael Jordan is the greatest who ever lived without even blinking. And the story of how he got here is wilder than anything you've seen on the court this season. See, the first red flag actually came before the trade even happened. Back in 2025, Nike sat Luka down and basically tried to move him onto LeBron's signature line. They had a full pitch, a full meeting, the whole thing. But Luka turned it down flat and stayed with the Jordan brand.
I wanted to begin Team LeBron and have Luka as my first signing with Nike.
At the time, people just called it a business decision and moved on. But then Luka told reporters something that should have stopped everyone in their tracks. He said, "I wear the Jordans because it represents winning. Everything else is just marketing." Bro said, "Everything else is just marketing," while standing 3 feet away from the most marketing-driven athlete on the planet. That was not an accident. That was a direct jab. He specifically separated winning from marketing. And everybody that heard that knew exactly who the marketing comment was pointed at. Because here's the thing about LeBron James that Luka was starting to figure out in real time. LeBron is one of the greatest PR operations in the history of professional sports. The man has a team of people whose entire job is to protect and polish his image. And for the longest time, it worked perfectly. But when you are Luka Doncic, carrying the heaviest usage rate in the entire NBA, and you are watching how someone like LeBron operates up close every single day, the image starts to crack. Luka came to LA expecting to play with his idol. He came expecting the kind of presence that makes everyone around him better, the way a real leader does. What he got instead was a crash course in what people around the league have been calling the LGM era for years now. For those who don't know, the LGM nickname exists because LeBron James has had a genuinely unprecedented level of influence over the Lakers' roster decisions. We are talking about a player who has effectively had more power over this team's direction than most actual general managers in the league. And the way that power gets used is fascinating because every single time a roster doesn't work, every single time the chemistry is off, or every time the Lakers underperform, the narrative that comes out always finds a way to make it someone else's problem, but never LeBron. But here's what makes Luka's frustration even more valid when you actually think about it. Michael Jordan, the man Luka now calls the GOAT without hesitation, did the complete opposite of this with his teammates. When MJ had Scottie Pippen, he didn't just use Pippen as a sidekick prop. He pushed Pippen so hard every single day in practice that Pippen became a Hall of Famer. Did you get that? The second best player on the 1996 Bulls, one of the greatest rosters ever built, was great specifically because Jordan's standard demanded it. And that's the difference when leading by excellence. Luka grew up thinking LeBron was that kind of leader. Turns out he had to get to LA and see it with his own eyes to find out he was wrong. But before we get into what Luka actually said publicly and how badly it shook the league, you need to understand that it's not just talk. Michael Jordan literally changed the NBA forever. And the numbers are there to back it up. Even KD came out earlier this year and said that no matter who passes Michael Jordan in total career points, nobody will ever be greater, and nobody will ever have the same impact on the game that Jordan had.
Bigger than the stats with MJ. And I don't think he has an equal in any industry. Everybody's talking about Mike every day, all day. MJ is just bigger than the game. I mean, no matter who passes him in stats.
Note that at the time he said it, LeBron James had already become the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. So when KD says nobody who passes Jordan's point total will match his impact, he is specifically and deliberately talking about one person. But LeBron fans like to talk about MJ like all the records this man set aren't documented and time-stamped for anyone who actually wants to look. Let's start somewhere people don't talk about enough. LeBron James was called the chosen one by Sports Illustrated when he was 16 years old. He hadn't played a single college game, hadn't faced a single professional defender, and the magazine had already started hyping him up. That's the foundation LeBron's legacy is built on hype. And that's fine, because he went on to have an incredible career. But Michael Jordan, nobody handed Jordan anything. Jordan had to go to North Carolina first and prove it against real competition before anyone was willing to crown him. And he proved it immediately. In 1982, as a freshman at the University of North Carolina, Michael Jordan hit the game-winning shot in the national championship game against Georgetown. His team was down 1 point with seconds left. Dean Smith drew up the play, and an 18-year-old Michael Jordan knocked it down like he'd been doing his whole life, because in his mind he had. Jordan went on to win 2 consensus first-team All-American honors and took home the John R. Wooden Award in 1984, which is basically the Heisman Trophy of college basketball. By the time the Bulls drafted him 3rd overall in 1984, Jordan wasn't arriving to the NBA hoping he could figure out. He arrived as someone who had already won at every level he competed at. And you know who else arrived that way? Luka Doncic. Luka won the EuroLeague MVP at 19 years old, which is genuinely insane when you think about it, because the EuroLeague is not a developmental league full of prospects. That league has seasoned professionals, former NBA players, grown men who have been playing at a high level for years. And a teenager from Slovenia walked in and was the best player in the entire competition. So when Luka stepped onto an NBA floor for the first time, he wasn't learning the game. He was already built. That's the same energy Jordan brought from North Carolina. And it's a huge part of why Luka recognizes greatness in MJ in a way that goes beyond just watching highlights. Everyone knows the Chicago Bulls before Michael Jordan were a disaster. We're talking about a 27-win team that nobody was paying attention to, playing in a city that cared way more about the Bears and the Cubs than whatever was happening with the Bulls. But Jordan showed up in 1984, and in his very first season, they jumped to 38 wins and made the playoffs. He was averaging 28, 2 points per game as a rookie, while also being a lockdown defender, which is something that basically no player in history has ever done at that level simultaneously. But that's just the beginning. Over the course of his career, Michael Jordan won 10 scoring titles. 10, LeBron James has won 1 scoring title in over 20 years in the league. And people want to put him in the same conversation as the man who dominated the scoring race for an entire decade. Jordan's career points per game average is 30, 12, which is the highest in NBA history. And in the playoffs, when everything is magnified and the competition is at its peak, Jordan averaged 33. For points per game, which is also the highest playoff scoring average in NBA history, the man literally got better when the stakes got higher. And here's the part that genuinely does not get enough attention. People remember Jordan as a scorer, and fair enough, because the scoring numbers are absurd. But Michael Jordan was also one of the most terrifying defenders to ever play this game. He made the all-defensive first team 9 times. LeBron has made it 5 times. Jordan won the Defensive Player of the Year award in 1988. And here's the absolutely wild part about that. He won it while averaging 35 points per game on the offensive end. That means he was the best scorer in the league and the best defender in the league at the exact same time. Meanwhile, LeBron has never won a single Defensive Player of the Year award in his entire career. And the craziest part is that 1988 wasn't even MJ's best season by his own standards. That year, Jordan became the only player in NBA history to win the scoring title, the MVP award, and the Defensive Player of the Year in the same season. And then he went ahead and had 4 separate seasons where he won the championship, the Finals MVP, the regular season MVP, and the scoring title all in the same year. And then there are the finals, the part LeBron's fans always try to blow over because they know MJ had 6 appearances, 6 championships, and 6 Finals MVP awards. Jordan never lost a final series, not once, which means every single time he made it to the biggest stage the sport has, he won. LeBron James, on the other hand, has the most finals losses of any superstar in the modern era, which is 6 losses. Now, here's the twist that puts things more into perspective. Jordan took nearly 2 full years off in his prime to go play baseball. He retired in October 1993, came back in March 1995, and missed most of 2 complete seasons at the absolute peak of his career. The Bulls won 3 straight championships before he left, and they won 3 more after he came back. If Jordan never walked away from basketball, we would be talking about 8 rings, maybe more. However, knowing a resume is one thing. What really locked it in for Luka was watching how LeBron actually behaves when things go wrong, because that's where the real character of a person shows up, and what's been happening behind the scenes in the Lakers is something everyone genuinely needs to hear about. Luka didn't just stop at picking MJ over LeBron quietly. He actually said out loud in an interview, and the exact words he used are what really got the internet going. He said, "Michael Jordan never lost a final, and he never blamed others. And if you think that was a coincidence, you have not been paying attention to how Luka Doncic operates, because he never blamed others is not a general basketball observation. That is a very specific thing to say when you're playing alongside a man who has made blaming others his entire strategy. LeBron is a guy who has treated the NBA like a transfer portal his entire career. From Cleveland to Miami, and then Cleveland again, then to LA. And here's the thing that nobody wants to say directly, but the numbers make pretty obvious. Every single team LeBron has left has ended up worse than when he found them. He left Cleveland the first time, and they went back to being a lottery team immediately. He left Miami, and they missed the playoffs. He went back to Cleveland, won a ring with them, and then left again, and they fell apart again. The Lakers got him, and have been in various states of dysfunction ever since. There's a pattern here, and the pattern is that LeBron extracts what he needs from a team and moves on, and the wreckage is always someone else's problem. That leads us straight into what happened with the Anthony Davis trade in 2025. The Lakers sent Anthony Davis to Dallas in exchange for Luka Doncic. And when the trade went through, LeBron James told the media it was a dream come true. His teammate of multiple years, a guy he had played alongside and won with, got shipped out of town. And LeBron's public reaction was that it was his dream coming true. That tells you exactly what kind of leader LeBron James is. MJ never once talked about his teammates like they were interchangeable parts. And this is precisely what Luka was talking about. Because MJ's entire approach to losing was to fix himself and demand more from people around him, not to swap them out. People forget that Jordan lost to the Detroit Pistons in the playoffs in 1988, then again in 1989, then again in 1990. 3 years in a row, the bad boy Pistons physically beat the Bulls out of the playoffs. And those Pistons were genuinely brutal. We will get into that more in a bit. But the point is, Jordan never once asked to leave. He never called the front office demanding they blow up the roster. He just worked, got stronger, helped his teammates get better, and in 1991, they finally broke through and won the first of 6 championships. That's what it looks like when the greatest player of all time is leading your team. Till today, you can't openly say something negative about Jordan in the city of Chicago unless you're looking for some sort of trouble. But somehow, LeBron's version of that is Instagram stories, and I wish I was exaggerating. After tough losses throughout his career, LeBron has posted cryptic messages, like tweets throwing his teammates on the bus, and made it very clear through social media that whatever just happened was not his fault. He did it with Kevin Love in Cleveland, making it obvious through a tweet that Love wasn't measuring up to his standards, rather than pulling Love up the way Jordan pulled up every teammate he ever had. And just a couple weeks ago, there was a post-game clip circulating where LeBron missed a shot and somehow found a way to make Luka the problem, because Luka passed him the ball. And here is where it gets almost embarrassing for LeBron's side of the argument. While he is busy pointing fingers and managing his arthritic foot with carefully scheduled rest days, his actual numbers in 2026 are sitting at 20, 9 points per game. For context, that is a fine season for a lot of players in this league. But this is the man who calls himself the greatest of all time. This is the man whose entire brand is built on being the best player on the floor every single night. And his defensive impact this season ranks in the bottom 10% of the entire league. Bottom 10%. Meanwhile, Michael Jordan played all 82 games his final Bulls season at an age where most players are already declining in an era where the physical punishment on the court was incomparably harsher than anything LeBron has ever had to deal with. And speaking of that era, you actually need to understand what Jordan was walking into every single night before you can fully appreciate what he accomplished. But before that, here's the thing. Luka is not even alone in this. Not even close. Because if it was just one young guy with a grudge, you could maybe dismiss it. You could say Luka is too close to the situation, too emotionally involved, or too caught up in whatever is happening in LA right now. But when you start looking at who else has been saying the exact same thing, especially people who have absolutely nothing to gain from saying it, it becomes very hard to argue with. Let's start with Heikki Olajuwon, who won 2 championships himself and is widely considered one of the 5 greatest players in NBA history. Heikki sat down for an interview and said Jordan is a far superior player to LeBron. Not slightly better, not more decorated, far superior. First time, and they went back to being a lottery team immediately. He left Miami, and they missed the playoffs. He went back to Cleveland, won a ring with them, and then left again, and they fell apart again. The Lakers got him, and have been in various states of dysfunction ever since.